to confirm.
Okay, ma'am. So, Dr. Fimba, what's happening tomorrow?
You're the one who will tell us, sir.
I've told you already that
Sorry.
all I know, the RSVP has not been able to do his.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we can start.
Yes, ma. Good
Ah,
evening, ma.
that person is tired, has worked hard today. That voice has worked hard today.
That's matron's voice,
Yes,
sir.
Maybe she has treated some patients today, attended to some patients.
I am tired.
Well, all right. Since we are not many, you may want to see my video. It's been nice to see your own faces later too, if you choose to. Okay, I'm Dr. Folu Olatono. I've taken you the lecture on Introduction to Public Health Nutrition. And today I'm going to take assessment of nutritional status. So for the purpose of this course, we would concentrate on assessments of nutritional status of a child because usually the nutritional status of children is very important, and if anything goes wrong, there can be a problem immediately. But for adults, you may not even notice anything in many months where there's a problem with nutritional status. So definitely I'll mention some things about assessing adults, but you should expect more on children. So assessment of nutritional status. The methods for assessing nutritional, the outline would be like this. The methods for assessing the nutritional status, the basic anthropometric techniques, applications and reference standards. We'll talk about biochemical methods of assessment, the clinical signs of undernutrition. That's when you adopt the clinical method. Then the dietary methods of assessment and the indirect methods of assessment. So those are the important aspects of assessment of nutritional status. And I would like you to think of different scenarios where you can apply this, not just to learn it for theory's sake. For example, one of the master students, the regular master student, reached out to me today, and she was asking me if I have a book on assessment of the nutritional status of a pregnant woman. Meanwhile, the person has gone through this lecture. So all you need to do is to think of the particulars, what is special about that situation, and how you can modify this lecture to fit. So if we're talking about a pregnant woman, what's special? That person is likely to be weighing more than the initial states before pregnancy. So you need to take into consideration the fact that the person is pregnant when you are assessing the nutritional status. In terms of anthropometric measures, that person cannot be compared to an ordinary woman who is not pregnant. And then when you think about dietary assessment, then you begin to think of whatever that woman is taking and in view of what she's supposed to be taking. So it's the same method that cuts across, but the interpretation, the application may be peculiar to whoever you are assessing. The nutritional status is the balance between the intake and expenditure of nutrients and the processes of growth, reproduction, and health maintenance of an organism. Every organism will have to eat to survive. But apart from the intake, every organism is also involved in expenditure. of the nutrients. So when we now think of the balance between that intake and the expenditure, that's what is going to result in the nutritional status. If the intake exceeds the expenditure, then there will be excess, and that will be overweight or obesity. And if the intake is much less than the expenditure, then the person may be underweight. Nutritional status of an individual is often the result of many interrelated factors. So when we talk about intake, expenditure, I'm sure the things that come to your mind is just what is the food intake, what is the exercise or physical activity level. But there are other factors that can influence the nutritional status. For example, the maternal health status before pregnancy and during pregnancy can affect a baby's nutritional status. Then when you pick that baby, the birth weight of that child can also affect the nutritional status later on in life. So for those children who have who are born with low birth weight, I'm sure matron would tell you that such children forever, they continue to be shorter than their peers and way smaller, way less than their peers, as much as 5 cm or in height, and even 5 kilograms in weight. They can be that short compared to their peers that were born at the same time. So even if two children of the same age are receiving the same food, they're undergoing the same kind of physical activities, because of that initial birth weight that is different in that particular child born with low birth weight, that child will continue to weigh less than his or her friend. And it's better to prevent such a problem than to live with it forever. That's the essence of this public health nutrition course. So that when you become the commissioner of health or the chairman of your local government or any other position of influence, you can let the whole population know that nutrition is very important at every stage of life. And if there is nutritional insult, it can affect a lot of things that have no remedy if that insult is not resolved within the first 1,000 days of life. So we are conversant with food intake quantity, but we also should take into cognizance food intake quality. So it's not enough to feed on a lot of food, but the quality of that food matters. And in that case, we're talking about what is the level of protein and micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals, not just carbohydrates. So you see many people feed children with a lot of pap at 6 months as complementary feeds without bearing in mind that these children need a lot of protein for proper growth and development. So it's not enough to stock someone with a lot of food. The quality matters. And then physical health. Physical health refers to the health status of the person you are assessing. If the person has a chronic disease such as HIV or diabetes or cancer, these diseases are wasting diseases. They actually waste energy, they waste nutrients. Even if that person is receiving the same nutrients as another person, he or she will still appear undernourished because that disease state is wasting the nutrients. And from what I've just said, you will agree with me that the spectrum of nutritional status can, spread from severe malnutrition or severe undernutrition at one end to obesity at the other end of the spectrum. So from severe undernutrition, we'll move on to moderate undernutrition, then normal nutritional status, or you can still talk of mild. Mild and normal usually group together. Mild undernutrition, normal nutritional status, then overweight on the other hand, and obesity. So this is the spectrum, and at every point in time, somebody will fall into one of these states. Why do we do nutritional assessment? Why? First, to identify individuals and population groups that are at risk of becoming undernourished or overnourished. Identify individuals and population groups who are already malnourished. To develop healthcare programs that meet the community needs, which are defined by the assessment. So what that third point is saying is that if you want to develop a healthcare program for a group of people, you don't just go to them and tell them, you guys, you need iron supplements. So next week I'm bringing iron supplements to you. They will just look at you. They may not even say anything. If you give them the iron supplement, they may receive them, but never take them. So it's very important that if you want to develop healthcare program, you must find out the needs of the community. They must agree that they need that healthcare program. And it's your assessment that will determine the particular need, the particular healthcare program that is needed. If you have a sponsor who thinks it's good to give Nigerians iron supplements and brings in a lot of iron supplements, and then you go into a community and assess their nutritional status and discover that the men are deficient in zinc. So it's not just iron. Many of the women may have iron deficiency, but the men also have zinc deficiency. And zinc is very important for the reproduction of men, productive system of men, just like iron is important for women. So in that case, instead of purchasing or obtaining a lot of iron tablets that may be poured away, you also want to look into zinc so that your program will be reasonable. And then when you start to effect or put up a healthcare program or a nutrition program, you cannot just establish the program and walk away. You need to check what is the effectiveness of this nutritional program. What is this intervention achieving? And how will you check? You need to measure the nutritional status again. So checking is not just enough to check the store and see that the iron tablets are no longer there. You need to check the nutritional status of the people again, and then you can now conclude whether your program is effective or not. How do we assess nutritional status? What are the methods of assessment? Usually, they are broadly classified as direct and indirect. So it's either a direct method or an indirect method. The direct methods deal with the individual and measure objective criteria, while the indirect methods use community health indices, which reflect nutritional influences. So talking about the direct methods, there are 4 major methods which are summarized as ABCD. If you remember that acronym ABCD, then you are likely to remember anthropometric methods, biochemical, which is also known as laboratory method, clinical methods, dietary evaluation method. Now let's discuss anthropometric methods. Anthropometry is the measurement of body height, weight, and proportion. So if you are measuring height, weight, or you are measuring weight, hips, or weight, hip ratio, all that is known as anthropometric method. It's an essential component of a clinical examination of infants, children, and pregnant women. In other words, anytime a healthcare provider comes across an infant, a child, or a pregnant woman, it's very important. It's compulsory. Let me use that word, to measure the height, the weight, and other body proportions that are peculiar to that particular person. For infants, if it's a newborn, you may even have to measure head circumference. Then for children, height and weight are always very, very important. Then you may need to calculate the body mass index. And then for pregnant women, sometimes you measure mid-upper arm circumference, just like you do in infants and young children. So you need to know the anthropometry that is peculiar to each group. This is used to evaluate both under and over nutrition. That's the peculiarity of anthropometric method. So you can evaluate under nutrition, you can evaluate over nutrition. It requires precise measuring techniques for it to be valid. So if the precise measuring techniques are not followed, then the values may not be valid. So for children, we measure mid-upper arm circumference. If it's less than 12.5 centimeter, we say that child is undernourished. And if it's between 12.5 and 13.5, it's acceptable. Then skin fold thickness is measured, but not all the time. It's not as common as height, weight, and mid-upper arm circumference. Head to chest ratio, head circumference are important in neonates. For those who don't have medical background, neonate is a newborn less than 1 month. Anthropometry for children. Accurate measurements of height and weight are essential, and the results can be used to evaluate the physical growth of the child. So when a child comes to a health center or an hospital, the height is measured, the weight is measured, that child has a chart that is peculiar to him. So every child should have that chart that is called road to head chart. So you plot the height on the horizontal axis and the weight, height on the vertical axis, the weight on the horizontal axis. And after a while, when you join the intersects, it will form a graph. And this graph will be compared to standard. On the road to head charts, there's already a graph that has standards. These standards help us to determine the lowest level acceptable and the highest level acceptable. So that lowest level acceptable is the 5th percentile and the highest is the 95th percentile. So if a child falls between this 5th and 95th percentile, so when you pick a child and you measure the height and weight and you plot the intersects, after a while you join the points to form a graph. That graph should exist between the 5th percentile graph and the 95th, that is for children generally. So this result can then be used to evaluate the physical growth of the child in question. Remember that each child has his own charts, and that the general graph that is for all children is already on that chart. So when you plot the one that is for the specific child in question, you can now compare to evaluate the growth of that child. You are monitoring the growth of that child. So ideally, the graph should be going up. I'm sure I have some. So this is what I've been trying to describe. If you can see the 5th percentile, can you please say, I see, so that I'm sure you are seeing it? Anybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And you can see the 95th percentile as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Very
Yes.
good.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when you pick the child in your own clinic and you plot the height and weight, you can see a blue point. That's an intercept. So
Yes.
one particular visit, you can even assess if that child is okay or not. Just one visit, one blue dot. But apart from what you get from one visit, ultimately, you want to plot several blue points and join them. So if you join them and it forms a curve like what you have here within the green boundary, you are happy that the child is doing well. But if you plot many blue points, and it goes up above the yellow boundary, you know that that child is obese. So if it goes below the green boundary, what would you say about that child?
Underweight.
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 So if you plotted 5 dots and 3 of them were within the green boundary, and then you now find out that the dots is going down, what's happening to that child? If it goes from the green boundary and it now comes down to the below the green boundary,
Is losing weight.
that child is losing weight, and that's what we call growth faltering. Growth faltering. The child was growing well before, then something happens, and the growth is faltering, is losing weight. So you need to find out, why is this child losing weight? Maybe the child has just had diarrhea or malaria or any other infection, and you want to intervene. So for growth monitoring, the data are plotted on growth charts over a period of time. That is enough to calculate growth velocity. This can then be compared to the international standard. So these bullet points that I've just read out to you is what I've been explaining within the last few minutes. So there are different types of charts: CDC growth charts, WHO growth charts. The CDC growth charts, the weight status category are as follows: underweight, less than 5th percentile, normal or healthy weight, 5th to 85th percentile, overweight, 85th to 95th percentile, obese, above 95th percentile. What are the types of undernutrition or in children? Severe underweight. You know, in children, we don't just talk about underweight, overweight. No, it doesn't stop at that. For children, we are considering many things. Severe underweight is when that weight for age is less than 3 standard deviations. 3 standard deviations. Then underweight is when the weight for age. So this situation, it means that you measure the weight, you know the age, and you find out how the weight for age is related to the international standard. If it's less than 2 standard deviation, that child is underweight. Then we consider the height too. So there are charts that have height for age, charts that are weight for age, and so on. So for children, it's not just underweight, overweight. So we have charts that you can use to compare the growth velocity of this child to the international standards. So anytime we talk about height for age, if it's less than 3 standard deviation, that's severe stunting. If it's less than 2 standard deviation, that is stunting. And height for age is an indication of chronic undernutrition. Please note, because this is very important in this public nutrition. Height for age, if it's less than expected, is a sign of chronic undernutrition. Whereas weight for height, when it's less than 3 standard deviation, is severe wasting, and less than 2 standard deviation is wasting. So always remember that weight for height is wasting. Weight for height, wasting. Then height for age, stunting. And stunting is a chronic problem, whereas wasting is a recent problem, it's acute. Body mass index is acceptable for children above 2 years. So when you pick a child, you need to know the age of that child to know the correct chart to use. If the child is below 2 years, then you are looking out for weight for age, height for age, weight for height charts. If the child is above 2 years, then you are looking for BMI for age percentiles. Can you see this chart? Which type of chart is this? Somebody answering, somebody's answering.
Road to health.
It looks like a
Road
BMI
to
chart.
health.
Okay, so this is the BMI chart. BMI chart. You see there is a bit different. It's different from weight for age, height for age, that is for children below 2 years. This is for children aged 2 to 20 years. That's the chart that is acceptable for children 2 to 20. Age and sex specific. So you see that this one is for boys. There are others that are for girls. So I'm using this example. So note that the BMI chart is age and sex specific. The value obtained is compared to standard for age and sex. High BMI does not differentiate between fat or lean tissue. So if you want to know, because some people will argue and say BMI is not sufficient to determine nutritional status because the weight that you are getting can be based on fat. It might not be fat, it might actually be lean tissue, it might be muscle, and all that argument can be resolved if we use other measures such as skin fold thickness and bioelectrical impedance analysis. That will differentiate fat. So these ones can measure fat content of the body, and then you will know whether the BMI you are dealing with is because of fat or lean tissue. If you have any question, please write them down so that at the end of the lecture, we can take the questions. So now on this chart, there is a 10-year-old boy with a BMI of 21. Is the child, does he have normal weight or overweight?
Wait.
BMI of 21 on that chart.
Overweight.
Thank you.
Oh.
So if you pick an adult who has BMI of 21, what will you say about that adult? An adult with BMI of 21, what?
That's normal.
That's
normal.
Thank
Yes.
you. So this is this lecture now helps us to realize that picking an 18-year-old boy or even 19, weighing 23 or 24, you cannot conclude whether that young man is overweight, is obese, or normal, you need to plot it on these charts. Plot against the age, plot the BMI against it. Remember that for you to get BMI, you first get the height and the weight. Then the weight over height square will give you the BMI. Then you plot the BMI on these charts against the age before you now conclude whether that child is overweight or obese. And the good news is that if you have a lot of young people that you want to do this on, you don't have to be plotting on the child one by one. For example, if you were to do a research and you want to find out the nutritional status of a group of 1,000 students, you wouldn't be plotting on the chart one by one like this. You're going to use a software called WHO Anthropometric. So you just, definitely you measure the height and weight, then you enter the figures into that software and it gives you the nutritional status. So this chart is for demonstration, for us to know that you cannot just conclude without checking with the age, BMI and age. Underweight, less than 50th percentile. LD weight, this is for adults now. So if you pick an adult, all you need to, no, I'm still talking about percentile, not for this chart that we just looked at. It's different from the age, weight for age, height for age. This one is BMI for age. And on this chart, underweight is still less than 5th percentile, 5th percentile, healthy weight 5 to 85th, and just as we discussed earlier. What are the advantages of the anthropometric method? This method is objective with high specificity and sensitivity. As long as you follow the correct methods of measurement, you can be very sure of what you're getting. And if another person goes through the same process, is likely to obtain similar figures. It measures many variables of nutritional significance: height, weight, mid-upper arm circumference, head circumference, skin fold thickness, waist and hip ratio, body mass index. The readings are numerical and gradable on standard growth charts. That's another advantage compared to when you just examine clinically and you say somebody has chillosis. And what is the level of chillosis? We don't know. How serious? We don't know. You just, okay, this chillosis is a sign of vitamin B deficiency, but you don't even know how serious it is. But for anthropometry, you can say this person is overweight and the BMI is just 26, so it's not too serious. But another person that is overweight and the BMI is 29.5, you say, this one is very close to obesity, it's a serious matter. So that's the advantage of the numerical readings. They're non-expensive and there's a minimal training needed by those who will do the job of the measurements. However, there are limitations such as inter-observer error in measurement, limited nutritional diagnosis. You don't have many diagnoses, just underweight, overweight, and that's it. Unlike if it's a clinical method, you get several types of diagnoses. Then problems with reference standards. Many people complain about these international standards not really fitting our children or our adults in this part of the world. Then arbitrary statistical cutoff levels for what is considered as abnormal values. How did people come about saying 25th is, with BMI is 25, that's the beginning of overweight? So those are arbitrary statistical cutoffs that may be unusual for some people. Well, we'll move on from A to B, biochemical assessment. Hemoglobin estimation is the most important test and useful index of the overall state of nutrition. Beside anemia, hemoglobin also tells about protein and trace element nutrition. So if we measure hemoglobin in the blood and it's low, yeah, we know that there's likely to be anemia, but apart from that, protein may also be the challenge because globin that combines with heme to form hemoglobin is a protein, and the heme is formed from iron, which is a trace element. So if the nutrition is lacking in these two nutrients, then there can be problem with hemoglobin level, and there can be a sign of anemia. Stool examination can point out the presence of ova or intestinal parasite, and we know that if a child has hookworm, for example, that child is also likely to suffer iron deficiency anemia because the hookworm is competing with the child for the little foods available. The urine dipsticks and microscopy for albumin, sugar, and blood. So we can check albumin, we can check sugar and blood in urine. And this can point our attention to the nutritional problem that is existing. Other specific tests. Measurement of individual nutrients in body fluids. So in biochemical assessment of nutritional status, there are many things can be done. It's not like anthropometry. You can measure serum iron, you can measure serum retinol, vitamin A, then you can measure vitamin D in the body, you can measure zinc, and all those nutrients. You can measure a lot of them. Detection of abnormal amount of metabolites in the urine can also point your attention to something that is a particular nutrient that is deficient. Measurement of enzymes in which the vitamin is a known cofactor. So if there's an enzyme that a particular vitamin is a cofactor for, and that enzyme is low, then you have an idea that that vitamin 2 may be low at that point in time. Analysis of hair, nails, and skin for zinc. If you analyze the hair and nail and the zinc level is low, then you may point your attention to the low level of zinc in the body. Zinc is very important, just like vitamin A, vitamin A, iodine, iron. That's how important zinc is. So what are the advantages of our chemical method? It's useful in detecting early changes in body metabolism and nutrition before the appearance of overt clinical signs. You know, for clinical signs, that problem must have reached a peak and then it shows outside. So if iron deficiency has reached a peak, then it becomes anemia, and then you check for pallor and discover that this person is pale. But before the person gets to that level, you can pick it through biochemical method. It's precise, accurate, and it's reproducible. It's useful to validate data obtained from dietary methods. For example, if you want to compare salt intake with 24 hours urinary excretion. So you maybe from the way somebody has talked about his diet, always adding salt to food on table, you are already guessing that this person may be consuming excess sodium, and then you do 24-hour urinary excretion and discover that sodium is also high. That's like a confirmation. What are the limitations of our chemical method? It's time consuming. Before you measure, you take to the lab, it takes a lot of time. It's expensive. You need experts that will take the blood, that will measure, and they cannot be applied on a large scale. I remember the last time I did a research to determine lipid profile. I was able to use only 20% of the whole population because it's difficult to apply on a large scale, but good enough is allowed to take 20% of your population and extrapolate the results over the whole population. Then we move on to clinical assessment. A, B, C. We are on C now. We're almost done. All the people that are tired, I hope the tiredness is disappearing. Clinical assessment is an essential feature of all nutritional surveys. It's the simplest and most practical method of ascertaining the nutritional status of a group of individuals. So several signs are used, and we'll run through some of them now. But before you examine people and assess them, it's good to take a history. That history will even direct you to the areas that you need to pay attention to. So generally, we pay attention to organs like the air, angles of the mouth, gums, nails, skin, eyes, tongue, muscles, bones, thyroid gland. And detection of relevant signs helps in establishing a nutritional diagnosis. It's fast, it's easy to perform. Those are the advantages. Not expensive, it's not invasive. But there are limitations. It does not detect early cases. You cannot quantify the level of malnutrition, and there are many deficiencies that are without physical signs. So that means you cannot do all that biochemical will do. It lacks specificity and is subjective to the nature of science. So if you examine the air and it's spare and thin, that means there's protein, zinc, and biotin deficiency. As in children, if you are able to pull the air out, there's protein deficiency. If it's corkscrew coiled air, it can be vitamin C and vitamin A deficiency. Then the eyes, pallor, folic acid, iron, or vitamin B12 deficiency. If there's night blindness, exophthalmia, vitamin A deficiency, photophobia, blurring, conjunctival inflammation, vitamin B2 and A deficiencies. If there's glossitis, inflammation of the tongue, riboflavin, niacin, folic acid, vitamin B2, bleeding and spongy gums, vitamin C, A, K, folic acid, and niacin, angular stomatitis, cheilosis, and fissured tongue, vitamin B2, vitamin B, C, and niacin, leukoplakia, vitamin A, B12, B complex. If you look at the nails and there's spooning means that the nails seems to go in and out like a spoon. That means there's iron deficiency. And if there are transverse lines, protein deficiency. Then the skin, you look at the skin, flaking dermatitis is an indication of protein energy malnutrition, pigmentation, niacin and protein energy undernutrition, bruising, vitamin K, C, and folic acid. Thyroid gland in mountainous areas and places far from the sea, goiter is a reliable sign of iodine deficiency. Joints and bones, vitamin D deficiency is a sign of rickets. And then scurvy arises from vitamin C deficiency. And then finally, dietary methods. Dietary methods. There are different types. Nutritional intake of women is assessed by 5 different methods: 24 hours diet recall, food frequency questionnaire, dietary history sincerely live, food diary technique, and observe food consumption. So for 24 hours diet recall, a trained interviewer asks the subject to recall all food and drinks taken in the previous 24 hours. So if I want to carry out a research on the 24-hour diet recall of executive MPA students, somebody should volunteer now to answer on your behalf. I'll first approach you and say, I'm conducting a research and I would like to interview you tomorrow or later today, whatever time we agree. So let's assume that I've invited you yesterday and I'm coming to you now to do the interview. Who is volunteering? Mrs. Alabi.
Okay, ma. Yes, ma.
Okay, so
Yes,
Mrs.
ma.
Alabi, what did on waking up yesterday morning, what did you eat?
I actually didn't eat breakfast today morning, ma.
No problem. So throughout yesterday,
Yes,
you did.
ma. I ate around 4 p.m. Salad.
Oh, we can't use you. Please choose another person.
So, ma, class.
Okay.
Okay. So, Mr. Adebekun, right? Okay. So, good afternoon, sir. On waking up yesterday morning, what did you eat?
Yesterday morning, my breakfast was rice.
Okay. So, where I'm recording, I'll write rice. What did you eat with the rice?
With the rice, there was this little vegetable around, and of course, the fish.
I'll write fish, I'll write vegetable. So, I'm not going to ask you what did you have for breakfast. How did I ask you? I said, on waking up in the morning, what was the first meal you ate? So you should not tell the client or the participant breakfast. Okay, if you choose to use breakfast, no problem. So the next question now, how much rice did you eat? I will need to show you a bowl or a cup and say, okay, if you were to put that rice in this cup, how many cups of rice? If you were, Mr. Adebeku, if you were to put your rice in milk cup, how many cups of milk will it be?
Is it when it is raw or when it's cooked?
Cooked.
Okay, when it is cooked, at least it has to be about between 5.5 to 6 cups.
Okay, 5 cups. So I already know what 5 cups will give me. So of course I'll go to the field with that cup and say, okay, you add 5 of this. I'll write it down, 5 cups of rice. Then what of the fish? How many pieces of fish?
Well, it was just one.
1. Then the vegetable, was it up to a cup or half cup?
Vegetable is to be about a cup and a half.
Okay, a cup and a half. So I'll write that down. Then after that, what else did you eat?
Because you are saying I should not say whether it's breakfast or dinner now.
No. What else did you eat or drink?
Drink. About 100 cl of water and
So after that, what food did you eat again?
that was maybe in the night because you are not saying time should be a factor.
No, I'm not concerned about the time. What says?
Okay, what other food? Okay, I took amala.
Okay. What did you take with it? So thank you.
Amala with gbegiri and ewedu.
Thank you. You are eating like a king. Oh. Okay, very good. So I'll keep asking like that. And then what was the last thing you ate in the night? Or did you wake up in the night to eat?
I didn't wake up in 19, but before I slept, I took golden morn.
Okay. So I'll make sure that I'll capture everything until if you woke up in the night to eat back to this morning. So that's the way to take 24 hours diet record. But you are not going to record what he ate this morning. But if he ate at 2 a.m. in the night, it's still part of the 24 hours diet record. Then we'll make sure that we capture the quantity very well. And then on my desktop, I can convert this quantity for each food. I will get the grams. And then from the grams, I know that from 100 grams of rice, I'm going to get 7 grams of protein. So I'll get the grams for each food, then I'll analyze it on my desktop or use a software called Total Diet Assessment software and say, okay, for my 500 grams of rice from Adebekun, we are going to get 70 grams of protein, 20 grams of vitamin A, B, and then do the analysis like that. So you agree with me that it's real work to achieve that for a large number of people. But it's quick to take when you're on the field, and it's easy and depends on short-term memory. The only thing is that if we meet people like Mrs. Alabi and they give us data of the day they did not eat, maybe they were fasting or didn't eat fully, and that's what we record for most of them, it will not be a true representative. So the solution, we take one day of the week and then one weekend and find the average. That's the correct way to get a 24-hour diet record. Then food frequency questionnaire. That's the second method. The person is given a list of all the food items, which can be up to 100, to indicate his or her intake per day or per week. Usually we have the one that is per week that we use in Nigeria. So you indicate how many days of the week you eat that particular food. And sometimes this food frequency questionnaire, FFQ, may involve estimation of portions of different foods. You know, that's similar to what I did for 24-hour diet report, where you are asking for the amount of food. But usually, a food frequency questionnaire just measures the frequency. It's not expensive, and this is more representative because we're able to capture all the foods for 1 week, not just what did you eat yesterday. The limitations are the length of the questionnaire and the need to update with new commercial food products to keep pace with changing dietary habits. So you remember Mr. Adebekun ate golden morn, and that did not exist in Nigeria several years ago. So if you look at the food frequency questionnaire that was used for nutritional survey in Nigeria several years ago, you will not going to see golden morn there. And you might not even see Indomie there. So there is a need to update FFQ from time to time so that it can capture new foods. The third method is dietary. What are you seeing on your screen? What's on your screen?
Dietary history.
Dietary history. So just like it sounds,
Dietary history.
history, just take the history. So when you were young, when you were growing up, what did you used to eat in your family? And somebody tells you, oh, in my family, my mom likes fried plantain, Indomie, this and that. And then you have an idea of what that person has been used to over time. Then the other person say, in my family, we eat corn on the cob, pounded yam, and you know that person is likely to tilt towards natural food. So dietary history since early life is an accurate method for assessing nutritional status, and the details about usual intake types, amount, frequency, and timing are very important to know the dietary assessment of that person. History tells us a lot about the present. Okay, then food diary. Just like the word sounds, it's the opposite of history. Instead of asking, oh, what kind of food did you used to eat 20 years ago, 10 years ago, what's the habit? You are asking, this is a diary. Please, for the next 7 days, record every food and drink that you eat. Just record it in this book and record the amounts. Then you collect it after 1 week and analyze. That's food diary. Then observe food consumption. This is the most unused method because it involves interfering with other people's affairs. You need to get permission to go to people's homes, and then you observe the meal eating. Before they eat their meal, you wait and you know the content, you know the amounts, and then you go and calculate the nutrients. This method characterized by having a high degree of accuracy because it's what they are about to eat. It's not about somebody telling you so that you feel good. You're asking the person, what did you eat yesterday morning? And the person knows that you're a nutritionist or public health expert. The person says, I'm waking up yesterday morning, I took smoothie. In fact, it was carrot, cabbage, smoothie. Then after that, I ate yam and egg plant. In the afternoon, I ate local rice, beans, and boiled fish. Because the person knows what you want to hear. It's different from this. This one, you are seeing the food direct, live and direct, exactly what they want to eat. That's all you are measuring. You are not measuring another. But you agree with me that this is very clumsy and expensive. So how do we interpret data, this dietary data? Remember, it's a qualitative method of assessment. Using the food pyramid and the basic food groups, you are able to classify food under the different food groups. Then the nutrients too are classified after you have measured the food, the amount, you use the food, we call it food composition table or the total diet assessment software to classify the nutrients, carbohydrates, protein, fat, and so you are able to know the amount of different nutrients in this food that you have measured. You determine the number of servings from each food group and compare it with minimum requirement. So when you have determined the servings for food groups and the amount of nutrients in the food, then you compare with what is expected for age and sex. So if in that population where you collected data, you found that the mean protein intake is less than 50 grams per day. And amongst men, that is less than what is expected. That means they are not taking enough protein. Even for women, that means they're not taking enough protein. So I hope I'm not giving you excess information that you don't need. So anyway, for this course, just note that those 5 methods are used to measure diet. 24 hours diet record, food frequency questionnaire, diet history, diet diary, and then food consumption, observed food consumption, food diary, I think. I call it food diary. Okay. Dietary is the food diary. Then observe food consumption. Those are the 5 methods for the diet assessment. Remember that dietary assessment is just one method of nutritional assessment. Okay? So we move on to the indirect methods of nutritional assessment. All that we have discussed within the last 1 hour is the direct method. And then we come to the end, let's discuss indirect methods. So what does indirect mean? It means that it's not the nutritional status that you are measuring directly. You are measuring other factors that will in turn affect nutritional status. So first, ecological variables such as crop production. So in countries where they keep food sheets and they know how much food they are producing, I don't know whether we keep such in Nigeria, the crop production versus the amount of food needed by the populace will determine if there will be proper or good nutritional status, or good, yes, or poor. So if the crop production is more than needed, then there's likely to be good nutritional status and vice versa. Another one is economic factors, such as per capita income. So if the per capita income is low, that means the people don't have the purchasing power, even if the food is available. Before you know it, they will ship the food to Togo or Cameroon if the people don't have money to buy it, because everybody that is producing the food is looking for money. And then the population density, if it's high, then that means some people are likely to suffer undernutrition. Vital statistics is like a product or a result. The first two factors are pre-factors, but vital statistics is post-factor. So if somebody is not eating enough, person may not be able to feed the child well, and then the child can die. So infant and under 5 mortality can be a pointer to poor nutritional status. And then if people are having 6 children, 8 children, in this economy, for example, you have an idea that such families, they will suffer poor nutritional status. So this slide further explains ecological factors, crop production, food balance sheets, conditioning influences, socioeconomic factors such as per capita income, population density, social abuse, family size, health and educational services. All these socioeconomic factors, if they are low, that's a sign of poverty, that's a sign of poor nutrition. If they are high, then those are signs of good nutrition. Vital statistics, I've explained: infant mortality rate, under 5 mortality rate, fertility index, morbidity and mortality data, rate of low birth weight and life expectancy, morbidity data. All these data can help to point attention to poor or good nutrition. Thank you for listening. So if you have questions now, this is a good time for questions. And if you still want my books, I don't know whether I showed you during the first week. You can also go to our website to download the books or request for hard copies. Thank you. Questions? If there's no question, that means we can all go.
There's a question mark.
Okay.
Hello.
I can hear you quite well.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. It's concerning the anthropometric method. It's just more or less like a comment.
Okay.
I think you've already mentioned in the lecture what some people have against it, that there should be variables with respect to the, I think, international standard. I wanted to say even within Nigeria, there are observable variations. Up north, they usually have, I think, their children being smaller in terms of birth weight, and then even in terms of growth rate. So I don't know if maybe if we're thinking of Nigeria, whether there are any laid down parameter for doing not international, but within, let's say, like areas like Nigeria, third world countries like Nigeria, if we have our own, we've adopted our own standards.
Thank you for your comment. We don't have our standards yet. We still rely on these international standards. And why they're still good for us is because it's not only the children in the Western world that were used to form those charts. Children all over the world, all African countries, low economic countries were represented. And that's why for now, it's still good enough. Yeah, I quite agree that many children in this part of the world actually are born small and grow up like that. But there's another concept which makes it important for us not to accept this status quo. That's the fact that when children are undernourished and exposed to affluence and surplus resources later on in life, they also develop non-communicable diseases. So even though it may look like we're used to being small, we adapted to it and it's good enough for us, those consequences that come later in life warrant intervention. That's why we should rather look at how to intervene to help our pregnant women and children so that the children are not born as low birth weight, and even the ones that are born are growing up properly, not in deficiency. Thank you for your comment. So I tried to put up the books again. I don't know if any of you have seen any of the books since the last lecture I had with you. Healthy diet and weight control tips. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, you can see.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This one would help you to understand all the different food groups. And this one would shed more light on infants and young children, adolescents, correct way they should eat. And then the thrust of this book is the fact that it's possible to be overweight and at the same time suffer from eating hunger. So like I told you before, that concept of eating hunger, you should master it. It means micronutrient deficiency. And many people that are overweight and obese are suffering from that eating hunger. So that's the thrust of this book. And for this one, is to let people know that you can eat healthy within a moderate budget. You don't have to break the bank to eat healthy. And African foods are readily available for us. So you see samples of African foods. You see that it's possible to use local rice to make jollof rice. It's not only processed rice that can be used to make jollof rice. And right on the cover of the book, you can see boiled plantain and vegetable soup, pounded yam and egusi soup, roasted plantain, mai and pap, and different things, and salad for Mrs. Alabi. I hope you can see salad on the cover of the book too. And then you can
Yes,
see
ma, I can see.
tiger nut milk just below the salad, tiger nut milk. So we can use our African foods to eat healthy. We can latch on them. And the trust of this book is the appendix that show the nutrients in common African foods and the fact that people can eat healthier within a budget. Then this one is not part of your course, but it's a good public health material for you to manage stress so that you can achieve your aim, can still be productive while you are doing your work. You are not doing it under stress. Thank you for listening and God bless you.
Thank you, ma.
Thank you very much, ma.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma.
Thank you.
So the books, especially these ones that are very relevant to your course, you can download from healthyliving.com or you can order hard copy. And if you have questions from any of the other lectures too, you can let me know. Any issue at any point in time, please tell the class rep to reach out to me. I wish you all the best in all your endeavors. Bye for now.
Amen. And you too, ma.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma. Thank you, ma.